moneymakers, owning a property can be complicated, especially when they start throwing around words like strata and dispute resolution. So we've teamed up with the Commission on Strata Corporations to break down everything you need to know about owning a strata property. Today we'll be speaking with Legal Officer Jared Johnson about strata properties and what you can expect if you purchase one. Hi Jared, welcome.
Hey, thanks much.
So first explain, what is a strata property? What are the key features?
Right, so in the most technical sense, a strata is a type of subdivision of land. So it is where you have a parcel of land that is subdivided or cut up into what are known as splinter titles, where you can have individual ownerships of units within a complex, where at least two of those units form part of what's known as like a block, where they share, a roof, common boundary walls, etc. In our normal context, Jamaican context, you're normally thinking about residential apartment complexes or a commercial plaza, for example. And each person who is an owner within that complex actually owns their lot outright to the exclusion of all others. Another key feature of the strata, however, is that the owners of the individual lots, known as proprietors, have joint ownership over what are known as the common areas or the common property. So everything that is not part of the strata lot that appears on the strata plan that is registered with the National Land Agency is common property. And one of the main aspects of common property that change strata ownership or define it as relates to any other type of land ownership is that the strata proprietors each have a responsibility collectively to maintain the common properties.
So you have like your pool, your gym,
precisely, right.
the lawn outside.
Right. Even your gates, your staircases, in many cases even the roof is common property.
The parking
lot. All of those things that are capable of being enjoyed and used in connection with the enjoyment of all of the proprietors, where no one proprietor can exclude any other proprietor from its use. They all share the responsibility to maintain those elements of the common property through the payment of contributions, or what we normally know as our monthly maintenance.
Right. So how is that managed then? If you have all these multiple owners and you have common areas, how do you manage that?
So what happens is that once a strata plan is registered with the National Land Agency, automatically the owners or proprietors of all the strata lots become what is known as a strata corporation, which is a body corporate in law. It is almost similar to just a company, where all of the proprietors are shareholders in that company. So that corporation, known as a strata corporation, has the responsibility for the collection of maintenance dues and the apportionment of those dues in order to maintain all the common areas, to include the green space, landscaping, security, all of those other provisions and amenities that are used by all proprietors in connection with the common property. The Strata Corporation, on a day-to-day basis, through its day-to-day functions, acts through what is known as its executive committee, which is a body of anywhere between 3 or 9 proprietors of the Strata Corporation who are elected at a general meeting of the corporation in order to essentially act as the bodies on the ground. So they are like the management committee for the strata. They are the ones who usually will establish the account to receive the maintenance dues, and they will be the ones to employ persons on a day-to-day, like contractors, landscapers, security, etc. And that element of strata ownership that I just spoke about, which is the general meeting, as you can hear, we're using terminology that's similar to companies, because strata corporations have general meetings in each year. They're required to have them by law, in the same way that public companies are required to have a general meeting in each year.
I was just about to ask, so how could I, as one of the owners of the strata, owners within the strata, ensure that I'm actively involved in the management and the running of the property? Is it by attending general meetings only, or are there other ways?
Well, it is attending general meetings. That is the main way that your voice can be heard, because you are entitled to a vote with respect to any resolution that the Strata Corporation wants to pass. So let us say the Strata Corporation wishes to hire a security company, for example, or they wish to hire a landscaper. Those are all things which have to be brought up at the general meeting, sometimes, but oftentimes quotes will be discussed, and the proprietors can take a vote by a show of hands or by poll as to whether or not they wish to proceed with this particular contract, for example, or make this particular decision. One of the main things you have to keep in mind is that you should be paid up in your maintenance dues as at the time of the general meeting, because if you have any arrears in your maintenance, if you're not paid up in respect of your contributions,
you're not entitled to a vote.
You're not entitled to a vote at the general meeting of the corporation. Another way, if it is that you're so minded and so able, is that you could vie for election onto the executive committee. So you can be one of those esteemed 3 to 9 persons who sit on the executive committee and take a more hands-on managerial approach to the decisions.
So that committee, does it have to be made up of the owners, or can we just appoint people or hire people to manage the strata?
So the law requires that the members of the executive committee are proprietors. They have to be owners within the corporation. However, many persons who serve in that role, it really and truly, it is voluntary. And, persons that live busy lives, they have other things attending to, particularly in a context where, they might be just owning a residence. So many strata corporations, where they have the wherewithal, they might enlist a licensed property management company, who is registered and licensed with the real estate board, for example, or, a real estate dealer who is licensed in the area of property management to take the reins, essentially, perhaps assist with the bookkeeping, the accounting, etc. But they do so subject to the control and management and expectations of the executive committee, because by law, they must be proprietors within the corporation.
Okay.
Right.
So how do I make sure that I live up to my responsibilities? And what are those? Is it just the monthly maintenance dues?
Right. So many persons think that, once you pay your maintenance monthly, that is the end all be all. But there's another very important aspect of strata living that is indispensably necessary for it to work, in a harmonious way. And that is the bylaws of the strata corporation. Every strata corporation has what are known as bylaws. They are a set of rules that govern the activities of the corporation as well as the proprietors within the corporation. So there are bylaws, for example, that prohibit proprietors from doing certain things to the detriment of other proprietors. So let me give you some common examples.
Yes.
So by default, the bylaws of every strata corporation will state that as a proprietor, you're not supposed to be doing anything to cause undue nuisance or annoyance or interference with other strata proprietors with respect to the use of either their lots or the common property. So, in a day-to-day context that we often see at the Commission, we might see situations where, for example, proprietors are keeping equipment or debris or sometimes even derelict vehicles on areas of the common property, on the green spaces, in the parking lots, to the detriment of other proprietors, and that can reasonably be seen as a breach of the bylaws if it is that that is an ongoing sort of activity. And bylaws, as we know them, you heard me refer to the default bylaws, because under the RSTA, the Registration of Strata Titles Act, which is the legislation that governs strata, there's a set of default bylaws which apply to all corporations, but they can then be amended and tailored and suited to a particular corporation if it is that a requisite majority of the proprietors vote at a general meeting to make amendments.
I give you a hot one, running an Airbnb.
Right, yes. So what I can tell you is that by default, the bylaws that are in the Act don't refer to it, but you will see this common trend nowadays, especially in strata complexes that wish to have a sort of residential character maintained. They may make that decision at a general meeting through the requisite majority by virtue of resolution to restrict or even prohibit short-term rentals in a certain context, and that is a prerogative of the owners. And so long as the requisite majority of owners vote for that amendment to be made, it can be made in that context.
So disagreements are bound to happen.
Certainly.
You mentioned some examples of things that some owners might be doing that others might not like. How are the disagreements resolved, and where does the Strata Corporation come in?
Right. So the Commission of Strata Corporations, which is the primary regulator of strata corporations throughout the island, as part of our mandate, we are empowered to facilitate the resolution of disputes that arise from the Registration Strata Titles Act. And those disputes can arise as between proprietor and proprietor, horizontally, or even vertically, between the proprietor and the corporation. If it is that, for example, there's a breach of the bylaws on behalf of one proprietor, or where a proprietor feels particularly marginalized by a decision of the corporation. What can happen is that the aggrieved party files a formal complaint with the Commission of Strata Corporations, which is accompanied by a very nominal administrative fee. At which time the commission receives the complaint, summons all relevant parties, to include the proprietor, the corporation, executive committee, what have you, to a hearing where every party is given an opportunity to tell their side of the story. And once that is completed, the Commission of Strata Corporations issues an order or a direction in respect of the parties to say that, in keeping with the Act, this is the course that should be followed. And non-conformance, with certain orders of the Commission can have penalties.
So since we've been talking about the role of the Commission in dispute resolution, can you tell us more about the mandate of the Strata Corporation and the functions?
Certainly. So the Commission has a very, very wide mandate, and the mandate is growing faster than many persons, probably even the framers of the legislation, could have ever imagined. If you see the number of high-rises that are going up even in the corporate area,
yes,
all of those are strata corporations that are soon to come into the fore. So the Commission has
more work for you.
certainly, and the Commission has the mandate with respect to all strata corporations throughout the island to supervise and regulate their activities. So aside from the facilitation of dispute resolution, we also collect annual returns, annual filings from each strata corporation, which they're required by law to file with the Commission with respect to a report of all their activities within the preceding year. So
basically anything that applies to a company applies to a strata.
Precisely. The same way that, for example, a company has to make filings with the company's office.
Right.
Strata corporations, on or before the same deadline, coinciding with the beginning of the fiscal year, the 1st of April in each year, are required to file annual returns with the Commission, so that the Commission can keep abreast of the activities of the corporation to ensure that maintenance that is being collected is being used for what the corporation resolved that it be used for, to ensure that all the relevant bylaws and provisions of the Act are being satisfied or being conformed with. As well, the Commission has the facility to issue what is known as a power of sale certificate in situations where there are proprietors who are failing, refusing, or neglecting to pay their maintenance dues to the corporation to the detriment of all proprietors, wherein the Commission can, upon proper cause shown, actually give permission to the corporation in order for it to sell a strata lot owned by a proprietor who has that arrears, in order to recover those sums
so you can
from the
force
proceeds of
the
sale.
sale of that property?
Precisely. To put it in context, when a proprietor is in arrears of their maintenance dues for a period of what the legislation says at least 30 days,
only 30 days?
From that point on, the corporation, if it is that it has shown that it has made all reasonable attempts to recover the sums that are due to it by virtue of the maintenance budget, the corporation, which is the Strata Corporation, a complex, can actually apply to the Commission at that stage for the issuance of a power of sale certificate. What I will say, though, however, is that usually that is considered the last resort.
Yeah.
It's what I like to term the nuclear option. And most of the times that the Commission receives applications for a power of sale certificate, it is situations quite a bit more egregious than 30 days. I can tell you from first-hand experience, I have seen situations where proprietors are in arrears not only for years, but sometimes decades.
Wow.
So money is, in excess of millions of Jamaican dollars that are owed to the corporation. And it's only at that stage that the Commission can receive a power of sale application, process it to ensure that what is being purported to be owed is actually owed by the proprietor, and that all reasonable steps have been taken to obtain it through amicable means with no avail. At that stage, the Commission can then issue the power of sale certificate to the corporation for them to either sell the lot by public auction or private treaty. In a similar way to, for example, how a mortgagee, like a bank or a financial institution, can foreclose on a property and sell it. If it is that the mortgagor, who is the borrower, has defaulted on their obligations under the mortgage deed.
So even though it says 30 days, it's highly unlikely that you're going to... That's definitely not the last resort.
Right.
So when a corporation applies to you for the power of sale,
Right.
if they're coming with 2 months, 3 months,
Right.
you're likely going to turn them back.
Well, what occurs at that stage is that the corporation would have to show that it has exhausted all opportunities available to it, and it's very unlikely that within a month or two you'll be able to show that. Which is why normally when those certificates are issued, we're talking about 7 figures or more, and that is usually when the sale is the only reasonable option that is available to the corporation to recover those sums that are due to the corporation.
So how often is this used?
Well, the precise figures, I must admit, they're not known to me now. But what I can say is that those scenarios where a corporation has exhausted all possible effort, in some cases, there are corporations who are dealing with proprietors who are overseas, for example. They have not dealt with their strata lot in a meaningful way in years. They've simply let the maintenance dues accumulate. They might have left a tenant there who, does not have the responsibility for the maintenance in the same way that a proprietor does. And it's usually only in those fringe scenarios that we get a power of sale certificate come to us, and that it's processed in a way that the corporation then deems it a worthy exercise to go to market to sell the property in order to recover those sums. And I'm telling you, most cases we're talking about over $1 million Jamaican dollars.
At least.
At least, right.
Right. So you also mentioned the filing of annual financial statements. Right. So what does that entail? What needs to be included?
All right. So quite happily, the Commission has resources in the form of prescribed forms that simplify the filing of financial statements and financial info. So the forms 13A, B, and C, which are readily available at the Commission's website, as well as at the Commission's office at 24 Trafalgar Road, give you the precise template of what is required. So all of those income, meaning all the maintenance income that the Strata Corporation would have collected or accrued during the period, as well as all the expenditure. So you would list out everything: your security, your landscaping, painting, any of those other things that you use in connection with the maintenance of the common property, and the amelioration of the property generally. If you did add, for example, a capital improvement exercise to say that you replace the roof, that would also be included on the financial report. So just so that the Commission as a regulator can see that the money is not going into an abyss. It's coming in on one end and coming out on the other.
Am I as a proprietor entitled to see or receive a copy of those statements?
In fact, you as a proprietor, pursuant to the default bylaws, you are entitled to request from the Strata Corporation a copy of the books of account. So that includes the most recent financial statements. In larger strata corporations that have the wherewithal for an audit, for example, you can request to see audited financial statements in order for you to avail yourself of that information and to be sure that your money isn't, going into the abyss. It's not going into a black hole. It's going in on one end and it's coming out on the other.
So who's responsible for filing that? Is it the executive committee?
Right. So ordinarily, the executive committee is who does the filings, and they normally sign the documents because they are the ones who are charged with that responsibility to act on behalf of the corporation, insofar as its dealings with the regulator. So typically, each executive committee will have specialized posts. They'll have a treasurer, they'll have a secretary who compiles, for example, the minutes of the general meetings, which should also form part of the returns. The proof of insurance for the corporation, for example, whether it be a cover note or a certificate of insurance that are kept by the secretary or the treasurer, those would also be part of the annual returns that are filed with the Commission, so that the Commission can see that the legislative ambit of what is required of the corporation is being met and satisfied. And that is all with a view, not to over-regulate and, to look over the shoulder of corporations needlessly, but to ensure that persons who are living in these communities, that they have an opportunity of representation. Right. They know that they're paying their money and it's being used for the purpose at which the corporation represents that it's being used. And also where there are clear deficits in the returns, the Commission has a number of ways in which we seek to intervene. So, for example, if we see that a general meeting was convened in a way that abrogated the voting rights of a particular proprietor, the commission actually has the power, for example, to invalidate a resolution of that meeting. If it is that, it's clear based on the minutes of the meeting that not all proprietors were given an opportunity to vote, so long as they were entitled to vote by virtue of their paid-up status. Additionally, the commission doesn't always take a big stick approach. We also have scenarios where we invite strata corporations and their representatives in the form of executive committee members to, workshops, sessions where we see that there are clear deficiencies in the filing and the paperwork, to assist them to better be able to, for the next filing period, be able to file accurate returns that reflect what actually happened on ground.
Now, I understand that the commission also carries out inspections.
That is so, routine.
Right. So what are you looking for when you do these inspections?
So inspections are carried out by our inspectorate arm, and when they visit a strata corporation, they are looking out for example, obvious breaches of the bylaws. If it is that you have a proprietor, for example, who has built an illegal extension of their strata lot into the common property to the detriment of the other proprietors, that's a scenario where an inspector, might raise a red flag to say, this doesn't comport with what is on the strata plan.
Are these routine inspections, or do you have to be invited to carry out the inspection?
So the inspectorate will send out, notices for the inspection ahead of time, but they are routine. So most strata corporations can expect to be inspected, on an annual basis. And at that stage, once it is that the inspector sets up a time with the corporation, they are expected to be facilitated, because as part and parcel of your obligations to the regulator needs to be able to inspect your corporation in order to properly regulate you. So in scenarios where the inspectors make themselves known to you and available to you for a particular inspection, you as a strata corporation have a duty to allow them to come in and carry out inspection, at least in respect of a common property.
Right. So what else are you looking for? You mentioned people building illegal structures.
Right.
What else?
Animals on the common property in breach of the bylaws. Many stratas have bylaws against keeping of animals on the common property, understandably. It could be scenarios where, I think I mentioned earlier, where there are derelict vehicles.
Are you talking about pets, or are you talking about like goat and
So it depends
donkey?
Entirely on the individual circumstances of the strata. If the strata disallows pets by virtue of its bylaws, and there are pets that are found on the common property, that can be seen as a breach. If it is that there are, for example, derelict vehicles that are kept on the common property, in the parking lots, in assigned spaces that don't belong to that particular proprietor, in breach of the bylaws, that can certainly be something that our inspectors would raise a red flag at, and perhaps take action in an enforcement notice, right, if necessary, right.
Okay, good. Well, this is all very good information.
Right.
Really appreciate you stopping by to help us understand strata corporations more. Anything else that you wanted to mention?
Well, aside from all that I've mentioned before, if there's any more information that any of your viewers want with respect to the Commission of Strata Corporations, you can visit our website it's reb.gov.jm. That's REB as in real estate board.gov.jm. You can visit our offices at 24 Trafalgar Road, Kingston 10, and speak with our customer service team. Or you could send us an email at info@reb.gov.jm, and you can expect a response.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, man. Thanks as well.
Much appreciated. So that was really good information from Legal Officer Jared Johnson. If you want any more information, check the links in our description for more information about the Commission of Strata Corporations. I'm Kalilah Reynolds. Until next time.